Hello and welcome to the Alex Spicer Show. I am your freedom specialist today, and I want to start off by talking about something that's on my mind quite a bit, and it's probably on the minds, actually, I believe, on most people in America, because there's something called race relations. and honestly, we always wonder, what do we do about minorities? How do we help minorities? What is the best thing we can do for them? And honestly, when you look at history, when you see what has happened to minorities, you start to realize that we help them best when we do least for them. And here's what I mean. We have a huge fear of failure as human beings. In fact, we even have an aversion to it. We try to hide it and we try to cover it up. We try to act as though failure were a bad thing. Right? People making mistakes, people not succeeding as much as perhaps we want to be able to see them succeed. In fact, that makes me think of a lot of helicopter parenting, where helicopter parents, what they do is they always hover over their children, and they don't allow their children to grow, to actually make mistakes. They always try to make sure that everything's taken care of for them, that they make the right decisions. They're very intrusive in their lives. And what happens is, you can read a lot of studies on helicopter parents, but what happens is that parents who helicopter their children, the children turn out to be very delinquent. They don't really grow up. They lack maturity. They don't really mature, and they have a lot of struggles later in life, or not even much later in life. Just especially when they become adults, when they have to act more responsibly, they struggle to do so because, well, their parents were always there to take care of everything. And that's if the parents actually let go of them. If the parents don't, then they still remain immature and unable to take care of themselves. They still struggle to succeed in a natural, normal, independent way. And what we value or should value in America is independence. But you're going to see that the government really, and us, by voting for people who enact programs, and for leaders who are for programs that act like a helicopter parent to minorities. And that's a really big problem. The problem is, that no matter how, even though it's politically unpopular to try to do things, it's politically popular. So it is politically popular to try to do things for others that we deem at a disadvantage, and we try to remove that failure from them. We're acting like helicopter parents. In fact, we try to ensure that they succeed, but you can't ensure that. They are unable to learn the things they need to learn in order to be independent and do it on their own. So one controversial subject, like I was saying, is how do we deal with minorities? History is full of the social and political discrimination that has happened against minorities. But probably the more pertinent ones are the political discrimination, the way the government has discriminated against minorities. You think of, slavery is a really good example that we immediately think of, as well as immigration and citizenship and full rights, and also the segregation laws in the South. Honestly, I found that what has been most damaging in recent times, since the end of systemic racism, is that the government has shown preferential treatment towards minorities. And in other words, they end up receiving government support. So by trying to step in and help them out with the government, we have actually disabled them from growing and integrating with the rest of the country. So the most disadvantaged minority, honestly, and this is, I think a lot of statistics and facts back this up, the most disadvantaged minority are blacks. And they have been the most hurt, honestly, by all the governmental efforts thrown at them, trying to help them. So when you go past the history of the systemic racism that has existed, they have continued to be hurt by the government trying to help them out constantly. By trying to, those liberal actions that try to do more for them actually have been extremely detrimental. And it has been the greatest obstacle that they have yet to hurdle. To say it straightforward, what I'm trying to say is we should let them be. Let them alone. And get the politicians out of their hair. Stop trying to show them preferential treatment, because it's not really working. The best quote that emphasizes this point is by a former slave, Frederick Douglass. This was a man who had been a slave and he ran away and became free. And what he said was, he's asking a question that has been on the minds of the people. He said, what shall we do with the Negro? I have had but one answer, he continues to say, from the beginning. Do nothing with us. Your doing with us has already played the mischief with us. Doing nothing with us. Let me just start over. What shall we do with a Negro? I have but one answer from the beginning. Do nothing with us. Your doing with us has already played the mischief with us. Do nothing with us. If the apples will not remain on the tree of their own strength, if they are worm-eaten at the core, if they are early ripe and disposed to fall, let them fall. I'm not tying or fastening them on the tree in any way except by nature's plan. And if they will not stay there, let them fall. And if the Negro cannot stand on his own legs, let him fall also. All I ask is, give him a chance to stand on his own legs. Let him alone. That's so powerful, especially when he says, give him a chance. Helicopter pilots don't give their children a chance to prove themselves. They don't give their children a chance to show that they can do it, to take care of themselves, to be responsible for themselves. And that principle of responsibility gets neglected. That's something that we can't neglect. When people are not taught to, when they do not learn how to be responsible for themselves, how to shoulder their own weight, how to take care of themselves, and we don't give them a chance to even try to do so, and to fail, to make mistakes, and to learn the better way, then we have really bad consequences that come as a result of it. Anytime you try to disregard a principle, the consequences are going to come regardless. Even if you think, well, if we do it a new way, it's not going to happen. I feel like sometimes we don't actually let, it seems very clear that we don't actually let minorities alone. We don't let them have a chance, as Frederick Douglass says, give them a chance to stand on their own legs. We are constantly helicopter piloting them, just hovering over them, making sure they're okay, and really, that's hurting them more than it's helping them. One quick example, because this can be a topic that we can go into for hours and hours. In fact, there's a lot of evidence on it, and I try to keep it short. But just so we can look at the other side, let's look at a minority that exists out there that did not receive preferential treatment, and it's actually turned out well for them. There's much that we can learn from Asian Americans. Quoting the Pew Research, they said Asian Americans are the highest income, best educated, and fastest growing racial group in the U.S. It's interesting that even other statistics will show that they have a higher average income than the rest of the population in total. That whether you're a minority or a majority, that as a group identified as Asian Americans, they have on average the highest grossing income. So I think that's really fascinating to see how when we allow people to stand on their own 2 feet, when we don't helicopter pilot parent them, we don't try to parent them, hover over them and make sure everything's okay, and we allow them to just learn and to work things out, that they can succeed. It's time that we see the truth behind disregarding this principle, and that we actually will respect the dignity and the freedom of choice and the choices in general of all minorities and majorities, that we will respect them enough to make their own decisions, to grow, to succeed or to fail, to go out on a limb and to try to become as best as they can become. We could do a lot less with entitlement thinking. And entitlement thinking applies to all groups across all racial lines. We could do a lot less with that. We should really try to stop shielding people from failure and from struggles, and try to let them take on their own responsibilities. When we try to take on their responsibilities for them, we cripple them. Let's try to be loving enough. This may sound kind of weird, but really let's try to be loving enough to let them walk on their own. Let's welcome minorities and majorities, all races, with open arms and help them as neighbors, right? Allow them to reach out, allow ourselves to help them as individuals, but not as a government. By doing that, we will do them the greatest good, do them the greatest service. Now, last little bit for what's been happening in the news, I made mention, or at least I thought I had made mention about how there was a U.S. women's soccer player who recently quit, and based on what you can see in the situation, that she quit because of her religious convictions. Now, she's a Christian, and U.S. Soccer, both men and women's league, decided that they were going to, for the month of June, for Gay Pride, LGBTQ, RST, WXYZ month, that they're going to have, for the Pride month, that they're going to have all their jerseys say Pride on the back instead of their last name, and also the color, the numbers are going to be colored rainbow to show off the Pride. And we all have different religious convictions. We all may think differently of that. We're not sure. Maybe you would respond differently, but 2 weeks later, after they announced this in May, she ended up resigning, and she had a lot of incredible things to say. I love what she had to say about what happened. And if I could pull up here real fast the quote that she shared, because I feel like her civility in the face of such a difficult situation is just fantastic. It's something that we should emulate today. So right here, excuse me for the pause. So what I wrote up here, and I just want to share with you, it's just that when U.S. Soccer decided, they would celebrate Gay Pride Month, LGBTQ Pride Month, at that Jeline Hinkle chose to quit. But I find it's interesting that she didn't protest. She didn't become nasty and distasteful and hateful. She actually responded very, very kindly. What we could do a lot less with today is misunderstanding one another by throwing hatred out there, by being so upset that we allow our emotions to overcome our civility, to overcome our relationships, our kindness towards one another. And so these are the two things that stand out most to me from her response. Is that do we have courage? She showed lots of courage. That's the first thing. Do we have the courage that she has? Because she showed lots of courage by choosing to quit. I mean, we're assuming she chose to quit. Maybe she was asked to leave. Who knows? But the fact is, she was willing to be firm for what she believed in. So regardless of what you believe in, are you firm for it? And the second thing is, that stands out to me, is she was very respectful. Are you able to act respectfully? I want to quote what she posted on Instagram following this event. She said, "My heart is that as Christians, we don't begin to throw a tantrum over what has been brought into law today, but we become that much more loving. That through our love, the lost, rejected, and abandoned find Christ. Love won over 2,000 years ago when the greatest sacrifice of all was made for all mankind." That hits me to the core. That's amazing that she could write that. Not really a complaint. Actually, you read the whole thing, there isn't a complaint in there. She's just very, very respectful, very kind, and continuing to express her belief, right? She expressed her belief by standing for what she believed in, which got her to end up leaving the soccer league. But then she continued to express it in the civil way, in a way that actually creates more unity. And that is, she says, we don't throw a tantrum. We don't do that sort of thing. And to recognize that for her, as a Christian, I too am a Christian, that we need to show more love and help those who feel rejected or who are rejected, who are abandoned, help them find, their higher power, or in this case, Christ. So, we can easily feel hurt from the loss that we experience for our beliefs, or even rejection. It might even feel unfair, but what's more important than our pride is our civility, our dignity, and our love for each other. We should not engage in vengeful tactics that we often see practiced by the left. We've had enough of that. If we're sick of it, we shouldn't engage in something like that. There are times when we need to practice activism. We need to be loud, but more often, we need to have the quiet dignity of a Jolene Hinkle. Show the whole world that we are good people. The quote that I remember the most is that I can't hear what you're saying. Your actions speak so loudly. That if we try to neglect our actions, we try to say our actions are an exception, that we can just do whatever, that people are only going to look at that. And you're never going to really win over, here's the caveat, is that you're never really going to win over those who are set in their mind to dislike you and to be opposed against you. And that doesn't matter. Those people will stay where they are. You'll never win them over, so stop trying. But there are tons of us who are more willing to listen and to come together, to be a community. There's far more of us than the media would have us believe. Yeah, there's great divides, but man, there are a lot of bridges. There are a lot of bridges. So just remember that. Remember that we can act respectfully, but also, more importantly, we can be courageous. I feel like we are often not courageous enough to take the right actions when we are confronted with these things, because we fear ostracism, we fear the even perhaps legal reprimands or whatever. But if we are willing to stand for what we believe and then continue to be civil, that will do more to win the hearts of people on both sides. That will do more to heal our nation than anything else. So thank you so much for listening to this segment. I want to now thank our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Elite Hathaway. We all know someone, or have heard of someone, maybe our grandparents, who got to their retirement years only to discover that Social Security couldn't provide enough for them. And if you are young like me, you know that Social Security is a waste of money and won't exist by the time you retire. What if there was a way to create financial investments right now that could guarantee you will grow your money regardless of how the economy goes? What if you could grow wealth with a program that makes sense, like your life insurance, which you could withdraw from at any time you need without getting taxed? And not only to withdraw it when you're old, while the government takes the taxes from it, like a 401k and a Roth IRA. This is why you're going to want to meet with the people at Elite Hathaway. They know just how to help you build your financial investments that actually work and that you can control. Elite Hathaway is an incredible group. I have personally met with them, and I can tell you they have high integrity. They aren't a shadowy company like a lot of others are out there. They actually are going to help you create investments that actually work. You can really trust them. Whether you have a lot or only a little to start with, they will find a way to help you make your money work for you. And for some, help you retire young. To meet with one of their licensed financial wealth planners to see how you can start to build your future and the wealth that you want, text the word future to the number 801-928-4344. Again, text the word future at 801-928-4344. Future at 801-928-4344. So I wanted to start off this segment of the episode talking about money, because money is extremely important. Honestly, we can't live without it. That's how our economies grow. That's how we purchase the things we acquire. We're not in a barter society. But I find this interesting is that we have become obsessed with economic status. It permeates our politics and our culture. We will label people as poor, middle class, 1% or the 99%. We put so much emphasis on economic status and opportunity that we unknowingly destroy the very things that drive individuals to produce, to contribute, and also to create real financial investments that will secure their futures. We make lots of poor decisions. There are too many people that are burdened with debt when it doesn't need to be so. According to the 2016 American Household Credit Card Debt Study, the average household has more than $134,000 in credit card debt alone, and accruing an average of $1,300 of interest annually. What I find is fascinating is that knowing that we're spending money like crazy, we're going into debt for school when a lot of times it's not important. We don't need to go into debt for school because we don't have to go to the big university. We could go to a trade school, or we could do all sorts of other things. The world, the economy, all the different interests out there will try to pull us in all these different directions when all along, unbeknownst to the majority of us, there are actual smart financial investments that we can make. There are things out there that can create a better security for us. That way we aren't worrying, we aren't scrambling, we aren't working until we're 80 or however old in order to just get by. And that's why I have two awesome guests with me today. I have Brooks Gibbs and Joanna Stock. Now, Brooks Gibbs and Joanna Stock, they are licensed financial wealth planners. And I'm super excited to have them on the line. Brooks and Joanna, are you there with me?
Yeah, hello, Alex. This is Brooks.
Hey, Brooks.
Hi, Alex. I'm here as well. This is Joanna.
Hey, Joanna. So thank you so much for being on this episode. I'm very excited to share with my audience the wealth of information and knowledge that you have. I remember I actually, this is my first time speaking with you, Joanna, but Brooks, we've spoken plenty of times, and I was just really impressed with a lot of the wisdom and also the awesome opportunities that you are aware of through your own knowledge, your own wisdom, through your experience, the things that you've studied.
The interesting thing about life is wisdom really comes from experience, and oftentimes that experience is not necessarily pleasant in the middle, but once you gather it, it's nice to be able to share that wisdom with others so they don't have to go through that pain factor.
Absolutely. I love that. We don't want to share the pain factor over and over, right? You can either learn by counsel or consequence. So tell us a little bit about yourselves. Joanna, let's start with you. Where are you from? And even just share one thing that has made you so passionate about financial independence.
All right, great. Thank you, Alex. It's a pleasure to be able to talk to you. So I am actually just from right outside of Salt Lake City, Utah. Grew up, born and raised right out in Bountiful, Utah. I've been here. I get out of the state a lot, but I'm here with my children 99% of the time. So I really probably the number one reason of why I've become so passionate in what I do with this, and why I've chosen, to take the route of really educating people and creating this awareness in this industry, is because throughout the years of my experience, you start to come across things that you don't really want to see, if you will. And when we're dealing with the financial industry, that in my mind is probably one of the most undereducated, and we're dealing with money and people's lives, there's so many things that are happening out there that people are unaware of, whether it's they're losing money, their fees, they're being taken advantage of. And when you come across those things so often, you really feel like, hey, you know what, something's got to change. And that's, what really drives me in this, is being able to just go out and educate individuals and make sure that they know what to look for. They know what's happening. In my mind, a lot of these things can be avoided if they just have, some sort of basic education or understanding of really, really what's going on. So that, I will say, is number one, the thing that drives me the most in this.
Awesome. Thank you. And Brooks, what about yourself?
I'm glad you asked that, because what's driving me is the wonderful word that we spoke with earlier, experience. Alex, I've had a great life, and I've worked a career all of my life working for someone else, And I have basically thought, oh, if I just work hard and I take care of the things that are along the way that get offered to me at places that I work and just kind of let it go on its side, when it comes to the end, everything's going to work out fine. And then I just got busy with life. You know, everybody gets busy with life. Geez, you've got kids that are going to baseball and dance and gymnastics, and they've got school projects, and you've got things going on in your religious faith and in the community, and just busy. Life is busy. So I didn't really focus on my financial future. And while I was taking care of my needs day by day and things were okay, my future as it now lies ahead of me is not quite as good as I'd hoped it to be because I didn't really take care of it. And so now I've determined that I truly want to figure out how I can change that in my life, because we have, in this wonderful country that we're in, we have the opportunity to change our destiny if we change our choices, we educate ourselves, and we plan for our future, and we execute towards that. And so my goal is to help individuals figure out that life is not going to the fast food and getting what's quick and easy to give you health. It's planning your meals, structuring it, and creating it so that you can create long-term health. That's true in your diet, and it needs to be true in your financial diet.
That's very sage advice. I just wanted to, I don't want to point out that you had talked about how you were taking care of your needs, but your future wasn't taken care of. And actually, I think that's a very big need, actual need, that we miss just as human beings in general, that we forget that our future is going to have needs, especially when it comes to the point that we don't want to work anymore. I mean, not even to talk about situations where you can't work anymore, just you want to be done, right? You've worked for so many years, you want to be able to enjoy the rest of your life without always taking care of the immediate needs.
Yeah, oftentimes that future holds just a different form of work. Let's not call it work. Let's call it adventure. Being able to share in service or with family or doing things. It's not showing up at a job, 40 hours, which is really actually for most people 60 hours a week. But it's showing up in things that you want to do to contribute into your life, your family's life, your community, and other things. And if you haven't put yourself in a financial position to do so, you're going to continue to be stuck doing things to just survive.
Absolutely. It's like Stephen R. Covey said. He had those quadrants, the needs quadrant, and there's those that are it's like an immediate need, and it seems like you need to do it right now, but it's not. So it always distracts our minds from the needs that are more, they're more important, but they're not as pressing, they're not as urgent.
Yeah.
And so really the insight knowledge that you and Joanna bring and opportunities that you know of help us to get out of that quadrant of always taking care of the urgent needs and taking care of the needs that are yet before us.
Yes, absolutely.
So I'm curious, most Americans are following the traditional economic storyline. They're doing things that the same old way as the past. They're following the same advice. Can you describe, let's see, Joanna, could you describe for my audience what the traditional economic storyline looks like so that way they can be aware of what it is?
Joanna, do you mind if I take that question? Because I think I've gotten the experience that I'd really like to share, because I think my life experience
go for it,
is very similar to what everybody does. I'm now about 57 years old, so I've had a great experience in life. I've had many, many jobs along the way. Each of those jobs have provided different ways for me to quickly and easily put away and aside some money. For most of us, that's probably a 401k. That's what my experience has been. Now, I thought that if I just deducted, had the money automatically taken out of my check, put into my 401k, and let it grow, that in the end it would all work for me. One of the things I didn't do is I didn't understand all of the elements surrounded around a 401k, which really is a tax code. And I didn't really understand that until just recently. So what it does is it allows me to put some money away for retirement, but I've had money in 401k that I've now lost twice in two economic downturns, in 2002 and 2008. Where the value that I had put in had grown, but in a single year, because of the market swing going down, lost nearly all of the value that was in that. And I'm sure that there are many individuals, if it wasn't you, it was your parents, who experienced the exact same thing. From that, I recognized there's just got to be better ways to do this. There's just got to be better ways to do this. And I think that that's one of the traps that we get into, is that we find what's really easy and offered at our work environment as a financial planning tool, and we don't really understand all of these circumstances and things that we need to do to surround it, to management, and we just let it go. Can I give you a similar story? It's like a garden.
Yeah.
You plant a garden in the backyard and you turn on the automatic sprinklers and you think, gosh, everything's just going to grow and I can take care of business because it's going to be watered and it's going to get sun and it's just going to grow. And you go for months through the entire summer and you come back to the garden and you walk back there with full anticipation of having this beautiful garden that's going to take care of all of the fruit that is now there, that's going to take care of you, the bounty. And you find a garden that's filled with weeds that does have plants and stuff that are in there, but they haven't grown to the fullest potential because they haven't been cared for. And the neighbor's rabbits got out of their pen and started to eat some of the food and take away some of that bounty. And it was all because you just thought you could let it go. Now, if you were to now go with a master gardener who helped you plan your garden and told you the appropriate time when to plant things, how to care for it, how to nurture it, when to harvest it, and when to replant, you would have a much different experience in that garden, wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's really what financial planning is there, is to help educate you in the choices that you get to make in managing your garden. Joanna, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Alex, I think one of the big problems is that just like what Brooke said, we've been conditioned to just go through and do the same thing. And whether that's something that, if our company offers this, or our parents did this, or, my neighbor or my buddy said, yeah, I'm doing this, you should do that. The problem is that there's really nothing cookie cutter about this industry. Everybody's situation is different. Their needs, their goals, their circumstance, their income, everything is different. So it doesn't make much sense to me to have everybody do the same exact plan, if that makes sense. So really, it comes down to the structure and just understanding what's available out there. And, that can be a game changer for people. If they really are able to understand all the pros and cons, all the advantages and disadvantages, the structures to every type of plan and option available to them, then they are actually able to make that educated decision and feel 100% comfortable and confident knowing what their money is doing, rather than the traditional, where I kind of, come across this a lot when we're looking at those overall plans, and it's usually, fingers are crossed, hoping they make it there. And just like you said, majority of people that I'm coming across nowadays, if they're a little bit older, they're not planning on retiring. And that to me is there's got to be another way, right? People are working 20, 30, 40 years of their lives. I mean, they've kind of lost a sense of hope just because they don't understand really how to strategize. And that's really all it comes down to. It can be very simple. It's just something that they've got to be educated in and really understand how to make that difference.
Absolutely. Education is certainly key. And, speaking of education, us younger people, millennials, and the generations after millennials, we're very much many of us are still very much in the education system. And I'm curious to know what both of you think. What do you think the greatest financial problems millennials and us younger generations face?
Joanna, do you want to run with that?
Yeah, I will. I'll run with this for a second, because this is something I actually have a son who's almost 21 years old, and I've done a lot of educating to the younger generations and more of the millennials. A lot of, obviously, what I come across is, number one, student loans are wrecking them. I mean, they are completely upside down in debt before they even actually get started in life. And so really, and I'm going to keep going back to this, but just going in and helping them understand it's really taking a different approach. It's teaching them strategies where, they can benefit so much more at a younger age because they have time to create that interest, to create those compounding effects. Instead of getting themselves into so much debt, they can understand how to strategize. Now, there's a lot of myths and misconceptions in this industry that you have to have a lot of money in order to, have your portfolio perform well. And that's just absolutely untrue. Like I said, it's just got to be structured properly for your personal situation, your needs, your circumstance at the time. So when we're talking about these younger individuals, financial literacy and education, I think, is probably one of the biggest problems, just, again, with everybody else. But because of them, and they are so young, like I said, if they are able to understand this, that at that younger age, they have a huge advantage over everyone else. I mean, you think about, if we just continue through this traditional process of, going through company plans or this or different types of, funded plans, government funded plans or things like that, these are things, again, that are not really working for our parents anymore. They're not really getting us there. And so if we can go in and help them understand, hey, they got to look at the bigger picture. And usually that's not something that they're looking at, and not just the millennials or the younger generation. It's obviously harder for them to think that far in the future. Just helping them structure something and showing them the benefits they can create in 10 years, in 15 years, in 20 years. It's huge. So I'm going back to that. I mean, just, financial literacy overall, it's not something that they teach in school still, even if they're going through, finance or courses in universities and stuff like this. They don't get specific in how to structure plans. They don't get specific in advantages or disadvantages, and what they really need to be able to understand to be able to create, that powerhouse portfolio that they want to be able to be a part of.
So, Alex, can I share a little story? I like to teach lessons in stories because I think that really helps you relate to it. And the power of your financial future is in a principle that uses two key things: compounding interest and time. Now, compounding interest sounds like an awful big word, so I want to use just a simple analogy of a story to understand what it means. And let's talk about an orchard. Now, you would agree that an orchard with dozens and dozens of trees has an incredible amount of bounty, lots and lots of fruit that is there. But did that orchard start in just one day? It didn't. It started from a seed, a simple seed that was invested or planted into the ground. That seed was nurtured and allowed to grow, and we took a little bit of that harvest. We used it to take care of some of our needs, but we kept some more of the seeds, and we planted some more seeds to allow that to grow. So in a couple of years, we didn't have just one tree, we had a dozen trees. But then, after a dozen trees, we then went to 3 or 4 dozen trees, and from 4 dozen trees to 100 trees, from 100 trees to 1,000 trees, because we were taking the seeds from all these things we were harvesting and taking a small percentage and reinvesting them into the ground. So at first, the return was small. But as it compounded, because with each return, we got the return on the returns, or I got new and more seeds to plant, so I therefore had more plants, therefore I had more harvest. That is where time becomes our friend, and compounding grows that to an orchard. That is the exact same principle that is used to grow your money. Invest it in places where it can grow, put it into products that will allow it to grow, and then what's even more important is protect it as it's growing. Because the worst thing that could happen is to have a storm come along and destroy your orchard. So you want to make sure that you have a good forecast and know what's going on so that you can protect your orchard, protect what's going on there. That's the principle, the simple principle of why you work with wealth planners, to help you determine what kind of products are out there that I can use to compound my investment and grow over the long term. Joanna, does that ring true with you as what we're saying?
Yeah, absolutely, Brooks. I love your storytelling. I think it really, helps people visualize and put things in a little better perspective. But yeah, absolutely, Brooks. I agree with every part of that.
Yeah, it's a fantastic analogy. It's more than just the whole, the old saying, good things come to those that wait. It's truly patience, right? Because we will often spend the money that we have on things that just are nice and shiny now, but by being patient, and patient meaning that you're actively engaging in active goals, you're participating in those things, but for the long term. It's like you're saying, planting those seeds and everything. And actually, that makes me think of people like really rich, for example, Warren Buffett, or even someone I like to think of more as Tony Robbins, because Tony Robbins, he's really famous. He's very well known for his speaking, for the breakthroughs he's able to provide people. However, a good friend of mine, Allison Larson, she had shared with me, and this is when I first had heard this. She said that he actually started making his wealth through other investments, that people think he's made all of his wealth primarily through speaking, but really he's made it through other investments. Do you know anything about that, or would you at least agree that's probably true?
Yeah, he has actually written 2 books in the past while where he's gone out and done research on the types of products and types of investments that could be used to truly grow wealth. Because as he looked out there, he saw it was frustrated to see that the average person who works day to day was not really understanding the opportunities that were available to those who were compounding their money. And so he took it upon himself to actually write about this in a couple of books. And Joanna, you've been looked at those books. What are your thoughts on what he's doing? Between him and Warren Buffett and others, they truly are using some products that are very, very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really just the strategies that they're implementing. And, anybody can go and Google Warren Buffett and look. There's been some really compelling articles that have come out just within the last couple of months of, his personal strategies and the advantages that you can create inside of that. Yet, but most people don't realize is that those are available to everybody. It's not just the Warren Buffetts and the Tony Robbins of the world and different individuals like that, but there's very few people that are really out there teaching and educating on these types of strategies and really helping people understand how they can maximize these, right? And so when you're talking about actually building wealth or accumulating wealth, it's very, very different than just teaching people how to get out of debt. Or, you've got your savers who like to just save money, and they never want to go into debt, but when they go and finance something, what happens to their savings? They're depleted. So the end result with those two, whether they're getting out of debt or they're saving and financing, it's both the same, right? They still end up at that zero mark. When you're actually growing and accumulating wealth, you're learning how to strategize. You're learning how to move your money. You're creating that compounding effect. You're learning how to create those tax advantages to where you can actually finance things on your own. You can still create interest on that. There's so many different things that you can do that you're not actually affecting your account, your accumulation value. And so as you're going through this or your wealth, your portfolio, when people understand these simple strategies, and I love, Tony Robbins' book that came out last year, I really, really enjoy him being able to go into detail on that because I've heard more about these strategies the last few years, but they're really nothing new to the industry, right? It's just still, they seem to be new to about 99% of people out there. And so I love that we have different articles and things like that, but again, they go into detail, they touch on the strategies and stuff, but they don't really dive in and tell people how to actually do that and maximize that. And that's where, somebody like myself or Brooks comes in to be able to educate them through that whole process. Number one, making sure that a vehicle like that is going to be suitable for them, for their personal situation. Because what I've found too is as we go through, right, and you're assessing and you're going over people's finances, usually what happens is everybody's looking at the end goal, right, that end result, whether that's the retirement age or if it's for college funding or something like that. But there's a lot of different things that you've got to take into consideration that are happening along the way. And that's where I feel like a lot of people kind of fall off is that they don't take into consideration, okay, well, here's where I am right now, here's where I want to be in X amount of years, but what's going to change in the next 2 years or 3 years or 5 years that could really have an impact over, with my overall goal. So that's everything that you've really got to take into consideration when you're looking to structure a plan, looking to see which type is going to be most suitable and beneficial for you, and then being able to pull all the pieces together. When you take that approach, you can put together something that's very, very, very strong, but you understand it, you get it. And so then it helps people to be more excited, more motivated to do that, because it's not just some foreign thing that they know nothing about. It actually really gives them that sense of hope that, hey, I can actually accomplish this, right? I see it's broken down. I have this structure. So it's really very different when you're teaching somebody how to actually create wealth or accumulate wealth throughout their life.
Can I add a little bit to that?
Absolutely. It sounds like, yeah,
so,
go for it.
We talk about individuals like Tony who've written the book Money, basically mastering the game. From a book, you'll learn a lot about principles, but the unique thing is that your life, as Joanna said earlier, is your life, and it is unique to you. Your circumstances are not the same as everybody else's. And so the power that comes from working with someone like Joanna and I and company Elite Hathaway is that we bring together a group of people who have amazing experience and who have brought together companies that have incredible products. And if you really look at all of these companies and all the products, there are literally hundreds and hundreds of types of products and options that are available. Can you just say one generic product is perfect for everyone? No, that's not going to be the case. So the beauty for your listeners is contacting and working with us so that we can do what we call that confidential dream map experience. If you're going to take a journey, Alex, you'd know that you wanted to go somewhere. But if you want to get there, you've got to first understand, where are you at? Where am I starting? And if I want to get to this journey, how am I going to get there? So you have to assess, well, what do I have in the way of tools? What do I have in the way of transportation? What do I have available to me now? What would it take for me to create a plan that could get me to my destination? And since I'm not an experienced traveler, I want to go to somebody who's maybe been through that destination and understands what all of the opportunities and obstacles are that are there, so that I could basically get some great coaching and wisdom as to how I could plan my trip. That's essentially what you do when you meet with a licensed wealth planner. You understand, and we work through, what are the challenges that you have? Where's the direction you want to go? Let's create your dream, and then let's work with our team of experts to go with all of the opportunities that are there and basically create the perfect plan for you. Because that's the way to go.
Absolutely. I think what you're talking about really emphasizes this truth, and that is that if you really want to be successful at anything in life, it always helps you to have some sort of mentor, some sort of guide. It's just time and time again what we're proven in our life. The more that we try to do things completely by ourselves, we don't tend to succeed very well. It takes us a long time to learn. The learning curve is very, very slow, and honestly, most people, when it comes to finances, because as we discussed before, we've been taught the wrong things, but more importantly, we've been taught the wrong behaviors, not even just the wrong facts or the wrong ideas about how to create a financial future that is best. That we've also been taught the wrong behaviors, or no behaviors at all. So we learn the wrong ones from our own experiences, and so we aren't really even willing to be accountable enough to become aware of what it is that we have and where it is that we can go. Like, how do we get there? And I think that's that really is, at least in my mind, that really is the wealth of help and of knowledge and success that comes from working with someone who's a licensed financial wealth planner, is because you guys actually know what you're doing. Most people are very ignorant as to where they are, and even they sometimes have an idea where they want to go, but they aren't being realistic in taking the right steps in getting there. So just last question, I want to ask both of you, What has been the number one lesson that you have learned in your lifetime about financial freedom?
Joanna, do you want to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. And, Alex, I wanted to just kind of mention just what you were in that last little bit that you were saying right there before this last question. You're absolutely right when it comes to behaviors, and it's no secret finances are not a fun subject for people to talk about, right? There's a lot of emotions tied to that. They're usually a very heavy subject. People just like to sweep it under the rug. They don't want to look. They don't want to know. It's like it's become that way. And then also this industry has just become accepted to be very vague. So even if they go in and they are working with something, they just kind of push it aside and don't really keep track of what's going on. Either way can obviously end up not being the best approach if they don't understand. One thing that a saying that we always like to go on is that most people don't plan to fail. They don't, right? They just fail to plan. And what my experience is the reason why they fail to plan is exactly what you're saying, because they don't understand it. It's not something they understand. And so really when they're able to get this education, these financial presentations, they understand more than 90% of people out there. And so those behaviors start to change because they become excited. They become motivated. You're taking an industry where, it's like, oh my gosh, I never want to look. I don't want to touch it. It's hopeless. I've got nothing happening. And you go in and you help them recognize ways that they can change it. Simple ways. It's not, it's not complex. It's not as complex as people seem. It can be very simple to be able to go in and, restructure things, restructure their finances, but they're able to recognize that. They can identify that because of the approach that we take as those wealth coaches, those wealth planners. So when we talk about, just for me personally too, I mean, being a single mother, for the last 9 years of my life, raised 4 children, obviously being able to understand finances and be able to have that sense of financial freedom. I mean, knowing in my mind, hey, I know what's going on with my money. I know that my funds are protected. It's not just been a game changer for myself, but also for my children. And for those generations to come, we're kind of creating this movement, being able to go out and teach other individuals, because like I said, it's things that people need to know. They're not difficult. They're not complex. I mean, you can go in and completely change somebody's, financial outlook by just teaching them these simple concepts, simple strategies. It's just, through my experience, nobody's out there doing that. And so that to me, has been the biggest game changer.
Yeah.
Not only for the things that, I've done personally, being able to understand this industry, but really being able to take that out and being able to impact so many other individuals where, like I said, the feeling that you're able to get when you come across someone where initially they have no hope and they leave you just excited and, they've got kind of this, really that new sense of hope of, hey, I know what's happening now. I know what's going on. I know what I can accomplish. It's huge. I mean, that's, that has been amazing to be able to experience in this industry. And it's really just all about the way that you approach it, what you're going for, what drives you. And so that, and my personal experience, when being able to, kind of be at that level where you have that freedom, that flexibility to go out and educate others, I don't think there's anything more rewarding than that.
Absolutely. And Brooks, what about you? What has been the number one lesson you've learned in your life?
Well, I'd like to share something. Before
freedom?
I do so, I'd like to ask permission of yourself and those who are listening to this to be really pretty honest and raw about something. So, the interesting thing about finance and money is in our society, it is how we measure our value. And therefore, we don't like to share that with individuals because we kind of want to make sure that everyone thinks our value is high. When we look inside and we go, man, I'm not really sure that I know how to manage this very well, but I don't want to look or appear that I don't know how. That fear and that particular prideful stand can be the downfall of your future. Find someone who can help you take a real look at where you're at and give you the opportunity to understand where you're at and teach you the principles of how you can change that. That is the power of life. You are the one who is in control of your destiny. You are the one who's in the control of making your choice. Don't be afraid to share some things out of fear you'll be judged when internally you know that, I really don't know and I don't understand this, but I don't want anyone else to know. That can be the downfall that will really hurt you in the future. And one of the things I recommend, whether it's with Joanna or I or anybody, go educate yourself. Go learn what's there. Ask questions and think about it and plan for it. Because as Joanna said, if you don't plan, you will not have what you desire in the end. And that is really the powerful lesson. Go out there, plan, take control, and take action towards changing your destiny.
I wholeheartedly agree. I love how you added about taking control of your destiny and also about educating yourself. Truly, for any sort of freedom, especially when it comes to financial freedom, we can't ever obtain that unless we educate ourselves, unless we make ourselves more aware, and we exercise our ability to act, our ability to choose, to recognize that we can actually do something about it, that we don't have to play into this culture of victimhood politics, right? We can actually have a successful future, and that's what really drove me to really want to obtain the advice and share the advice that both of you have with this audience, is because both of you understand the importance of financial freedom, and not only that, you understand how to get there, and you understand how to help people overcome the obstacles that you have to overcome in order to get there. Because trust me, there are obstacles. There are obstacles to everything. It's never easy. The only easy thing in life that I have found is slavery. It's so easy to put yourself in some sort of bondage. Sometimes it can be so enticing, but the things that we fight for, the hardest things that we work for the most, even if it takes time, like Brooks, you had mentioned that with the garden, planting seeds and nourishing it and letting it grow, that allows us to appreciate, not only appreciate, but then to enjoy the fruits of our labors, right? The things that we end up with in the end. So thank you so much, both of you, for being on this episode with me. I love the information you have to share, and I just want to ask you, how can people get in touch with you? Because you are incredible, just wells of knowledge, but also you are leaders. You're mentors. You're able to help people actually plan. You're legitimately a financial wealth planner. So, how can people how can they get a hold of you and even ask you questions?
The easiest
or
way
else?
to do that in today's technology is sitting in your hand with your cell phone. Just text a message called FUTURE, FUTURE, to 801-928-4344. And in that, just mentioned you heard this podcast. And with that, what Joanna and I will do is we will actually set up an appointment with you to meet with you for an hour, you and your spouse or significant other, and really go through one of these confidential dream maps so that you can look and get a real value of where you're at today and where you want to go. And then we can help you look for products that would truly give you the opportunity to make a better choice. So again, the phone number is 801-928-4344, and text the message FUTURE. And I'll get right back with you, and we'll set up that appointment for you. Also, Alex, I believe we're going to be on your website, so we'll have numbers there, and they can get in touch with us that way as well.
Absolutely.
Brooks, do you want to mention that appointment? We will actually offer that with free of charge. Okay, we're not going to charge for anything like that. Just want to make sure that is clear to everybody out there as well.
Yeah, that meeting that we'll get together with you will be free.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being on, and I look forward to possibly having you on the show again one day in the future, and honestly continue going out there and helping people obtain their financial wealth, their freedom, and their success. And I honestly thank you so much for just being on here, and thank you for being a part of making the world, making America a freer place.
Thank you, Alex.
By helping
Joanna,
educate
thank you
people.
for co-hosting this along with me today.
Absolutely. I really appreciate that, Alex. Thank you very much. Thanks, Brooke.